Not good. Not good.
Should you be here?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine health-wise.
Now,
Oh.
Yeah.
oh, jeez. I know they won't.
Yeah.
You know the number one rule, Greg. You have to take care of yourself first.
I did. I'm fine.
Okay, just making sure.
They called me at 6 o'clock this morning to see if I had any pain. I said, are you serious?
Makes sense. Steve's here, you're here. You just turn it over to me and I do what I do.
Okay, I have 10 o'clock, so I will call the Board of Commissioners meeting of December 18, 2024 to order. We do have a lot of things to cover today. Welcome back, Veteran Don Bradley, to lead us in the pledge, and welcome back, Reverend Keith Farr, to lead us in the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, in this holiday season, we give you thanks for the joy and light of this time, and we certainly celebrate all of the gifts that you shower upon us during this time and throughout the year. We're also mindful of those who the joy and light of this season is overshadowed or tinged by their own personal struggles and sorrows, and we pray that our time together today would be a sign of light and hope for them all. Be with our commissioners, be with all of our elected public officials and staffs as they deliberate and work and seek to serve the good of all of our people, all of our community, and to glorify you in all that we say and do. In your holy name, amen.
Amen.
Move on to item number 2 on the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 4th, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting as submitted.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I'll turn it over to our solicitor.
Now, good morning. This is the time and date fixed for a hearing on ordinance number 2024-04. The title of the proposed ordinance is an ordinance amending the York County Code, Section 112-7A, to increase the uniform parcel identifier fee. In summary, the motion of this ordinance is simply to amend Section 112-7A of the York County Code to increase the uniform parcel identifier fee from $10 to $20 per instrument. The ordinance was properly advertised. I would ask now if there's anyone here to testify or comment publicly regarding the ordinance as advertised. For the record, I see and hear no response. As it appears there is no testimony or statements to take, it is now appropriate for the board to take action on the ordinance, and I turn this back to the Board of Commissioners.
Thanks. Okay. We'll move on to the Chief Clerk's report.
Good morning, and thank you. We have a long agenda today, this being our last Commissioners' meeting of the year. There's a lot of housekeeping items to take care of. I don't have a lot that I want to talk about. I'd like to highlight 4 of the items at the end of the agenda, just all being parts of renewals of individual pieces of our health insurance program. We're proud of how that's going, and the results of those marketings that we did for those different products went very well. So I wanted to highlight those, and then I also wanted to invite Caitlin Steele up from the Planning Commission to talk about item number 19. Yes, item number 19, please.
Good morning. Just wanted to briefly touch base again as we had previously reviewed the awards that are being recommended today for your approval by the Opioid Advisory Board. The board had received a lot of applications this year, 32, and today we're recommending 4 one-year proposals to be awarded and 8 three-year awards totaling over $3.6 million. These are, of course, focused on ultimately eradicating the opioid issue and pandemic in our community. But I did want to just take a few moments to thank 3 instrumental people that will be stepping away from the OAB this year. So first and foremost, Felicia Dell, who helped to stand up the OAB. You had previously recognized her years of service at a prior meeting, and so I just wanted to thank her for her assistance and trust in me to lead this endeavor on behalf of the Planning Commission. Second, our current District Attorney, Dave Sunday, as he heads out of his office. His original founding of the Heroin Task Force really set us up into the position that we are in today. And then third, as he leaves for Attorney General, he is taking Kyle King to be his Chief of Staff, as you well know, and he has been an instrumental part of our work as the OAB to review and approve applications. So just wanted to thank them publicly for their hard work and dedication. And then, of course, if you have any other questions about the awards, I'm happy to discuss them. But ultimately, we're just really pleased with the value and the determination that our community organizations and departments have set forth this year. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else?
Nothing else for me to highlight on my report. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I will open it up for any public comment as it relates to items on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to new business.
Madam President, I enthusiastically move to approve items 1 through 41 on today's agenda.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There were no executive sessions since our last meeting. I don't have anything on the docket for other business. And so I will move on to any additional public comment. Hearing and seeing none, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to salary board.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024 Salary Board meeting as submitted.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will open it up for any public comment related to items on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4.
I make a motion to approve the positions, salaries, hours of work, and fringe benefits as provided by existing collective bargaining agreements or as set forth in the York County Employee Handbook or York County Policy Manual for the following departments and or offices as stated below, with no additional benefits or concessions unless otherwise noted, and there is listed in the agenda.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. An executive session of the Salary Board was held on December 17th, 2024, to discuss matters related to personnel. Oops. I'll open it up for any additional public comment. Hearing and seeing none, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll move on to Retirement Board.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2024 Retirement Board meeting as submitted.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll open it up for any public comment as relates to items on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to new business. We have a motion up for new business.
I make a motion to retain the annual interest rate of 4% on individual employee contributions for the year 2025.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Lee, welcome back.
Keep you moving along. I'm going to hand out these booklets, but if you was able to upload that short version I did yesterday, we can just follow along
You got it.
on the screen.
Okay.
Good morning.
Okay, the last meeting of every year, we, as you know, we pull together that annual database report, which began as a project 17 years ago, and
We like it.
we love doing it. So, and actually, it's been used pretty much across all the organisations now. We're definitely the Treasurer's organisation now. We do a review annually, and controllers, we do too. And you'll see a lot of trends the next couple of minutes here for last year, where you're seeing a lot of the other counties are kind of looking at counties like you that are doing things the right way and starting to align their assumptions more in line with your pool. So if you go to the next page, and if you wanted to follow along in the book, I'll reference the page. It's the poor. Although this is a landscape, it's the portrait book that you have. But first off here, if you look at benefit class, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, you used to see a 140th on there and a 150th. You guys are obviously familiar, having had that class way back when. You know, counties realised since the GFC that, you know, that is just a little bit too rich to be able to keep up with assets, etc. So you can see a lot of them are actually now exactly where you are, where you moved to several years ago, the 180th plan. And even some of these that are 160th now are considering doing that because now you also have defined contribution plans as well that they can invest in. If you drop to the next page, which would be page 7 in your book, assumed rate of return, you're actually 6.75. So again, you know, 15 years ago, everybody was 7.5. You guys sort of led the way with a few other counties of putting a more realistic return assumption in there. You can see now the national average is 7. That's where most are, you know, if we bracket them. But it's still quite a lot north of 7% there. And, you know, the fear for them over the long term is they might not be putting enough money into that plan to meet those future, you know, promised benefits for the pension. Next page, just quickly, from the salary increase assumption. The sweet spot here is to have a 300 basis points, 3% between your return and your salary increase assumption. Think of that as long-term inflation over time. And I know historically folks have said, well, you know, we've not been doing 3.75% annual increases. But remember, you're looking over the full lifetime of an employee. They get promotions, etc. So you need to consider that from the actuarial point of view when they value your liabilities. So again, the good news for you is you're in that sweet spot of that 300 basis point delta. If you go to the next page, COLAs is obviously a big point of interest for counties. Last year, there were only 3 counties that did that. I would have expected more because if you see prior to GFC in 2008, a lot of counties used to do that. Post-GFC, you know, with the look-back provisions you had then, it just became too costly, so basically went away. Then in 2017, with the new Act 63, where you could nix the look-back provision, but you must have 80% funded to be able to do a COLA. You saw that year it spike up. And then unsurprisingly, because you have to have this discussion every 3 years, you know, 3 years after that, you saw it spike up again. 2024 was 3 years after that. We haven't seen that jump this time. And the main reason behind that is an input into COLAs is inflation. And obviously inflation's very high at the moment. So when you're looking to do COLAs, it's actually quite expensive Next page, just the last couple here. You can see from a performance point of view, you guys, well above median, 5 and 10 years. But more importantly, if you go over to the next page, and this is page 15 in your books, what we've started to introduce now is we put volatility in there. So think of it now as a risk-adjusted return. How much return are you getting for the volatility of your plan, the risk in your plan? And the good news here is you can see you're one of only 2 plans that are right at the top there. Because you're focusing on the downside and the risk as well, you're actually getting paid for every unit of return for less risk than most of the other counties out there. Again, because you're bigger fund for the most part, a lot more diversified, which helps that. And then just last couple, funded ratio. Most of these plans now are above 80%. There are a couple below 60. We're sort of not showing it there, but there are 2 below 60. From a return point of view, I'd expect it to be a little higher, but obviously your liabilities from that, 1/50th back in the past, your liabilities are a little more bigger. So that's why you see you're in that kind of 80 to 90 from an adjusted point of view. This year, you're going to highly likely end up again another double-digit return. So 4 of your last 5 years will be double-digit returns. So you might see that improve when Greg comes to do your actuarial report. And then the final one, just to be mindful of, again, not too bad for you as a county, because you are still able to employ newer people to come into a plan, and that's so important for a defined benefit plan. As these plans mature, 50 years ago, there weren't many retirees, so there's a lot of money going in the plan, you weren't needing to sell assets. Now, most counties, the plans are maturer. Several actually have more retirees than people putting in, and so you're having to sell more assets every year. Be more mindful of liquidity and downside protection. You guys you're at about that equal spot, balanced spot between the two, because good news here, you're still a growing county. As you get out into the more rural, smaller county areas that are not growing, this becomes a real problem for them to manage longer term. But something we're mindful of, and we work with the Controller's Department on a monthly basis to create liquidity, particularly this time of the year. You're going to see now, you had about $6.5 million you had to draw out last quarter just to pay the benefits. So that latter half of the year, that's a growing number each year. So that's the annual report. Any questions on that? If not, we'll just briefly hit the 3 pools. So if you go forward 2 pages for me, and I'm just going to make one quick comment just about the market, so give you a bit of idea of performance. And this would be in the landscape report, tab 2, page 13. And it's no surprise to see here, GDP was strong again in Q3, and his continuing to be here in Q4, expecting again around about another 3% GDP growth. So no surprise to see good returns out of equities. You see US up 6%, international 7%, emerging markets up just under 9%. A lot of that came right in the last week of the quarter when China threw in all that stimulus, and they popped their index over 20% that week. So that really contributed to that. You've seen emerging markets kind of go down again since that. But under the hood, if you look under the hood within equities, we finally saw a change. Remember the 18 months prior to the third quarter, it was really the Mag 7 and the big tech running. Now with rates coming down, that's more bullish for interest rate sensitive areas. Financials, which are more value stocks, so you saw value outperform growth for the quarter. And then smaller cap companies do better because they tend to be more levered up. So as the debt costs come down, that's going to be a bit of a boom for them. So small caps and value are doing much better now as the markets broaden. If you look at core bonds, over 5% for the quarter, just on the fortnight. Rates are starting to come down now, yeah? And I'm actually talking the other day on the last Fed meeting day of the year. Very likely, this afternoon we'll be down another 25 basis points. And that'll, again, be a little bit of a short-term shot for bonds. And then finally at the bottom there, inflation-sensitive assets. You can see they've just been on a tear this year with rates coming down, inflation still somewhat high. And that's been a boom for the higher dividend paying companies. So you're going to see that kind of lead what you're going to see in your privates over the next couple of years, because the privates tend to lag by about 18 months. So that's the markets. Anything on the markets? If not, we'll just cover the observations for the pools. So you ended the quarter at 577 million there. October was down a little, but November was up. So you're sort of kind of around that similar number. You have had gains, but as I said, you've had money go out as well. So you've got to kind of make that up. It's a strong quarter in around 5%, pretty much right on your policy. As you just heard me say, you know, with rates coming down, that's very bullish for value, small cap, those low vol dividend paying equities in the market. So that worked well. What didn't work as well with the things that were working earlier in the year for you, more of the growth type equities and private equities. Over that mini cycle of the past 3 years, you've gained 90 million, you know, around about 6%. Again, just a little bit above your policy, and that leads you in the top 13% of all defined benefit plans here in the US. So that's great relative. And no surprise, a lot less volatility, that beta at 0.94 below 1. One of the reasons why you're doing well is, remember a couple of years ago, we put redemptions in the real estate when it was doing really well, knowing it was going to get marked down. So that's been great. You've been getting over $1 million or so a quarter out that you're not investing back in a falling market. Why receive a dividend for $100, give it back the next day and it's $90? We didn't want that. So that's been very accretive for you. And that's enabled you to bring your real estate down. So you are quite a bit underweight at this point. But looking ahead to next year for this fund, and we had an hour or so meeting earlier this week, more with your investment kind of committee group, and it's time to kind of revisit that asset allocation and real estate strategy. Now it's sort of kind of normalized and stabilized. At some point next year, we'll probably turn that dividend reinvestment back in and kind of get on as the market turns again. Because as you saw in the REIT market there, you know, things are starting to improve as these investments are lowering their office exposure. So that's it on the pension fund. Anything on the pension? Okay, if we go next page, we'll cover the OPEB. Again, you guys and Franklin County have been a real leader here in Pennsylvania in actually recognizing you have a liability for the OPEB and putting a trust fund in place. You've heard me say that many times. Because you're not really drawing so much money out of this, you're able to invest it more for the long term, a little bit more aggressively than the defined benefit plan, where you're having to sell assets on a fairly regular cadence. So here you can see even higher performance, 6.5% for the quarter, which is great to see. And also here you're in the ag bond, not the intermediate of credit, so you got a little bit more of a bump from fixed income. Similar things worked for you and went against you. But more importantly for this pool, since you funded it, 7 years ago, you've gained over $16 million. And as you've heard me say that before, that's $16 million that other counties have to go to taxpayers for. You know, you guys have grown that in gains and can now use that to pay those future promised liabilities there. So, any questions on that? OPEB? Nope. All right, let's finish up on the 457. Again, no surprise to see the market grow. You're above 30 million now. I remember when you guys did the RFP on for this maybe 6-7 years ago, it was in the teens. So it's great to see through contributions and growth in the markets that the fund's done well. 2/3 of your employees are using target date funds, which is probably right for most folks. And that'll glide for them over time. When you look at the other third of the assets that people are putting in and allocating themselves, it's 75-25 when you look at the average age. I mean, it's like an almost perfect asset allocation. So, you know, there's obviously some advice going on here that's helped. And then a couple of things that I pulled out of the Empower book that I just thought of interest to you now. But I thought Empower have not been here for a while. It might be a good idea sometime next quarter when they get their end of year kind of review on this, is for them to come in and do a little presentation. More so, less so from the investment side of things that we help you with on, but more so on the participant kind of things, what are available to participants, etc. So a couple of things that kind of stood out for me this quarter, if you look at the trend for participation rate, we saw a big jump over the summer here, which is good. The more folks that are kind of putting in, it kind of helps leverage, scale and fees for everybody else over the long term. So that was good to see. The other thing that I thought was great to see, if you look all the way on the right there, if you look at the number of people contributing over 10%, it's about 15% of the employees. Now, if you tell me that in a corporation, I'm like, well, that's not great. But you've got to remember, you guys have this DB plan that they're all putting money in as well. And then, if they're putting over 10% in this, you obviously have some good savers in your county, saving for the future. So that was good to see. And then just finally on the last page, just a couple of other metrics to see here. And this might not mean a lot to you, but I think when Empower explain it more, it may be good. That top left-hand box, normally you find, and this basically looks at your participants to say, how close are they to meeting their retirement needs in the future from what they're doing? Normally when you look at that, most people are down in the teens. They're a long way from, having the money they need. But here, out of 478 of your participants, you're right up there over that 70% mark that most folks have again. And that probably even doesn't take into account the DB plan that is in there. So I think your employees are in very good position here. And then finally at the bottom, and I'll finish up, you can see you have about 27% of your participants who have actually signed up for support and advice from Empower through this My Total Retirement. So that might explain why a lot of folks who are doing it themselves are kind of honed in on an allocation that looks to be suitable for them. So I'll close there. Any questions on that?
Nope.
All right.
Just,
Very good.
for the
Feel free to
record.
reach out every time. I know you see it all every week, the pension and OPEB, so you
Well, I
won't be
think one of the
surprised.
reasons we have participant increases, Greg Bauer's department has done a great job of educating employees on the importance of investing, so I have to
Yeah.
thank Greg for
Yep.
that.
No, it's great to see because obviously, sometimes the 457 is a bit of an afterthought for counties because of the DB. So that's why I was, your guys considerably higher than we see, across the rest of the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think that's your record for most brief presentation. Okay, there were no executive sessions since our last meeting. I will open it up for any public comment. Hearing and seeing none, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned, and we will move on to the York County Board of Elections. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 22nd, 2024 meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I will open it up for any public comment as relates to items on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn it over to Brian Schaefer, Director of Elections.
Good morning, Commissioners. Two quick things I just wanted to point out. In the coming weeks, our office is going to be sending out letters to townships, the city, boroughs, and school districts. We are already prepping for the 2025 primary, so if you are one of these people that received the letter, please take time to review it, make sure it's accurate. We're doing everything we can to make sure we're capturing your unexpireds, make sure we're capturing all your seats. But at the end of the day, we need the township, city, and boroughs and school districts to just double check to make sure we didn't miss anything. And if we did, please let us know right away. But we are doing a very thorough process, so I am confident we are capturing everything. The other thing, in the coming months, we're going to be sending out the annual letter for mail-in ballots again. I would just remind voters that the sooner you get that back to our office, if you choose to vote by mail next year, the better it is for you and us. We can get them processed, and there's no mass rush, a week before the election to get it back to us. So that's my report.
Okay, great. Any questions for Brian? All right, move on to the next item on the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the increase of Judge of Elections and Inspector of Elections pay to $200 for the Judge of Elections and $175 for the Inspector of Elections for Election Day to take effect in 2026.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There was an executive session of the Board of Elections held on December 16th, 2024, to discuss litigation matters filed by the ACLU concerning poll workers. I will open it up again for any public comment. Hearing and seeing none, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. And we will move on to the Depository Board. Call the meeting to order, open it up for any public comment as relates to items on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we can move on to the item number 3.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 3rd, 2024 depository meeting as submitted.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On to new business.
I make a motion to retain the following depositories at the noted financial institutions with the requirements that all checks, drafts, notes, or order drawn against the foregoing accounts must be signed by the county commissioners, the county controller, and the county treasurer, and the accounts are the lead capacity grant and the insurance fraud grant.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. Is this an interest, are these two interest-bearing accounts?
They are, and the controller's office asked, currently these funds were in the general fund. The controller's office asked that they be segregated so that they can keep track of that interest for auditing purposes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I make a motion to retain the following Fulton Bank account, checking account with the requirement that all checks, drafts, notes, or orders drawn against the foregoing account must be signed by one of the following, and that's the county commissioners, the county controller, the county treasurer, or Timothy Barker. And that is the Prison Telephone Commission Fund.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will ask that question again. Is this an interest-bearing account?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Wonderful.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
motion carries.
Make a motion to retain the following Fulton Bank checking account with the requirement that all checks, drafts, notes, or orders drawn against the foregoing account must be signed by one of the following. It is an extensive list as listed for the Prison Welfare Fund.
I'll second the motion.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
One more question. Is this an interest-bearing account?
It is.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I move to retain the following Fulton Bank checking account with requirement that all the checks, drafts, notes, or orders drawn against the foregoing accounts must be signed by one of the following. And again, it is as listed for the prison work release account.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Question, is this an interest-bearing
Yes,
account?
it is.
Thank you, Bart.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
I move to retain the following depositories that at the noted financial institutions with the requirements that all checks, drafts, notes, or orders drawn against the foregoing accounts must be signed by the prothonotary and the deputy prothonotary, and they are all prothonotary escrow accounts.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I think there's one more.
And I make a motion to close the following depositories at the noted financial institution as listed.
I'll second the
I
motion.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Any other business? Just want to, for the record, thank Treasurer Bear for all her assistance with all of these accounts. It's a lot of work, so we thank her for that. I will open up for any other public comment. Hearing and seeing none, if I could have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. For those watching, whatever you do to celebrate the holidays, have a happy holiday and a safe holiday, and we will see you in January.